How are drugs a threat to Australian society? Well, physically, some drugs are bad for people, so there is a health issue. Some people can turn to crime to feed their habits, and dealers do kill people for the right to sell on larger turfs. Also, there is a huge economical cost involved in policing and enforcing drug laws. Should there be stricter sentencing for drug dealers, traffickers, and users in Australia? Well, first, let's look at the current state of drug laws in Australia. Did you know that in Australia you can serve between 2 years and life imprisonment for selling drugs? Drug laws are strict in Australia, but do they need to be? With the amount of drug arrests in Australia, our prisons are filling up pretty quick. And did you know that it costs money to feed, clothe, and look after these prisoners? It takes money from Australian taxpayers to support these criminals. But what can we possibly do to empty our prisons and relieve the strain on our economy? Could we strengthen our laws to such an extent that no amount of money could get a dealer to deal? I am, of course, talking about the death penalty. In many countries, there is still a death penalty for selling, taking, or producing illegal narcotics. For example, Indonesia. Indonesia has a relatively low drug smuggling rate ever since they started executing criminals. Should we implement this into Australian culture? And would it avert drug dealers from selling drugs? Or from traffickers bringing drugs into Australia in the first place? In my opinion, I think not. I think the death the death penalty was outlawed in Australia for a reason, and we should not bring it back. What is it about drugs that is so appealing? For as long as people have known about the effects of narcotic substances, they have been using them to recreationally get a high. For example, the Vikings used to use a mushroom cocktail before they went into battle, as it made them hallucinate into thinking that they were invincible and impervious to pain. These drugs had side effects back then, same as they do now. So why do people risk their health and freedom to get a high? We all know the horror stories involved in drugs. That they are all evil and will kill you and everyone in a 30 media radius of you. But is any of the drug scare culture true? Yes and no. The thing is that drugs are illegal for a reason, and some of these reasons are that they are dangerous and can temporarily or irreversibly do harm to you. Some of them can even cause death. To categorize these drugs, so a drug categorizing system is implemented and is used to judge their potency and to make the sentencing for criminals easier. There are three categories, ranging from Class A to Class C. Class C drugs are said to be dangerous and addicting, but are still at the lower end of the harmful drug spectrum. This class is home to drugs like cannabis, Xanax, Adderall, clonazepam, and Rohypnol. These drugs, while dangerous, are not the most dangerous drugs. Therefore, they carry lighter drug sentencing laws. Class B drugs are not the most dangerous, therefore are deemed very dangerous, and some of these can kill you. This is why the sentencing for Class B drugs are quite a bit stricter than those for Class C. This category holds drugs like amphetamines, speed, codeine, ketamine, quaalude, and MCAT. Class A drugs are deemed the most dangerous drugs on the market, and have the harshest drug penalties and the harshest side effects. This category includes drugs like cocaine, heroin, MDMA, ecstasy, ice, meth, decimorphine or crocodile, Atorphine, PCP, and magic mushrooms. Could it really be that hard to quit drugs? I mean, people do it for smoking, people do it for drinking. Why not drugs? It is presumed that drug users and addicts simply lack the moral fiber or the willpower to quit, and they simply cannot control the appetite for controlled substances. In reality, drug addiction is a complex disease, and in most cases, is cannot cannot be quit cold turkey. This is because drugs can change the chemistry of the human brain, making subconscious decisions for people that they need to take drugs just as much as they need food or water. What people don't realize is how quickly someone can become addicted to a drug and abuse it. For some weaker or more common drugs like marijuana, tobacco, or alcohol, an addiction can manifest in someone quite slowly and will gradually make a person rely on them, compared to drugs like amphetamines, cocaine, heroin, which are quite rapid acting and can make someone very, very addicted very quickly. Drugs can't possibly be affecting our economy, could they? It is a well-known fact that the cost of combating the world's drug problem is very high. But how high is it really? It is estimated that the total global cost of enforcing drug laws, medical bills, rehabilitation, and the cost of cleaning up the aftermath of this vicious syndicate has cost 316 billion 960 million 500,000 US dollars, or in Australian currency, 452 billion 800 million dollars since 2003. This isn't even counting some of the costs that have deliberately not been taken into account. The expenditure of money used to fight these drug dealers is insanely high, and could otherwise be used to better the world's economy, hunger crises, and better healthcare. What is it about drug effects that is so bad? Different drugs have varied effects, both in severity and their high. Drugs like ketamine, atorphine, and GHB, when used, are called sedatives. These drugs are used to render people unconscious and are sometimes called date rape drugs. Then you have hallucinogenic drugs like MDMA, acid, PCP, and magic mushrooms. These drugs, and others like them, make the user's nervous system skids out. They hallucinate and see, hear, and feel things that aren't really there. In the case of PCP, this is not only dangerous for the user, but can also affect people near the user, as the user is liable to become hyper-aggressive and attack them. Finally, we have stimulants, such as heroin, cocaine, crystal meth, and speed. These drugs make the user hyperactive and are the most addictive substances, and coincidentally, the most expensive. They make the user rely on them, and then the dealers exploit this by taking all the user's money, meaning that they pay for their habits, that to pay for their habits, some of them must turn to crime and even prostitution. So yeah, if you apply all that I've learned, and all that I've shown you, to Australia, and the recent ice epidemics, which has already popped up here, drugs are a huge threat to our society, and should be dealt with sooner rather than later. What do you think?